Major Blaine McGraw was a Army doctor, gynecologist to be specific. He was stationed at Fort Hood and several other bases. He's a major, of course he was. But here's the problem. He was taking pictures of female private parts. You heard that right. He was taking pictures of female private parts and taking video. Wasn't supposed to, but he did. He's been caught by Army CID. So we're going to cover this story. It's one of those situations where you've got to be thinking, why? Why was this allowed? Because I'm certain that somebody had to have known that this was going on. I mean, somebody had to have seen it prior to when he actually got caught, because it seems that he was doing this for quite a while. So the problem of all this is we've got a doctor, an army officer that is doing some nastiness. And these women are his victims. Now, it could happen in any branch. There are some sick individuals that end up in these positions. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. So, we're going to discuss this not because I'm denigrating the army, but because this situation needs examined. And by the way, this guy's been doing this long before Trump. And if he hadn't been caught, would have been doing it long after Trump. So we need to examine how we treat our military personnel who have to deal with these doctors who, hey, there are some very good doctors in the military. Army, Air Force, Navy, all three branches. I don't know what's going on with Space Force. I haven't studied Space Force enough to understand whether they're using Air Force medical facilities or what they're doing. But the this dude just is a sick individual that kind of made it into uniform. Before we get into that, before we get into this story and my introduction, hit like, hit subscribe if you want to know what's going on with the government on a federal, state, or local level. Now, sometimes I cover just individual stories like this that I'll probably see what happens later on down the road, make a video about it, or sometimes I just am giving you background information that may not sound relevant right now, but if you get it in your head, it might come across as something relevant later on in the future. But also, I've got a link tree down below. It's got my Patreon, got other links. Hey, help me out on Patreon if you want to. Let's get into this story. The founding fathers wanted two things for America. One is they wanted us to cherish our freedom. The other was to think. Because if we're making sure that we're thinking about what's going on and knowing what's going on, then we'll maintain freedom because we'll fight for it ourselves. That's the whole purpose of this channel. To cause you to think so that you know what to do to keep your freedom. This is coming by Haley Fuller of military.com. Hopefully the information's somewhat correct. I've researched it. Most of it is. There might be a point or two that I might get wrong because I'm reading from military.com. On October 17, 2025, the U.S. Army suspended Major Blaine McGraw, a gynecologist at Carl R. Darnell Army Medical Center at Fort Hood, after a patient accused him of secretly recording her during a gynecological exam. According to a lawsuit filed in Bell County under the pseudonym Jane Doe, McGraw allegedly pretended to take a phone call, placed his smartphone in his breast pocket, and filmed the patient while performing a pelvic and breast exam without consent. The civil complaint claims investigators later discovered thousands of photos and videos of women on his phone, including imagery taken at prior assignments. The same lawsuit alleges McGraw's earlier posting at Tripler Army Medical Center in Hawaii generated prior misconduct complaints that Army leadership ignored, allowing him to continue treating patients. Following the October complaint, the Army Criminal Investigative Division opened a criminal investigation and removed McGraw from clinical duties. Officials told Stars and Stripes the hospital sent letters to roughly 1,400 patients urging them to report any concerns to investigators. Attorneys now represent approximately 50 women who have joined the suit or filed related claims. The complaint accuses McGraw of privacy, assault of an intimate nature, and medical negligence. Because the alleged conduct occurred in a federal facility, plaintiffs are also pursuing claims against the U.S. government under the Federal Tort Claims Act, arguing Army officials failed to properly supervise McGraw and dismiss prior complaints. If substantiated, the failure could make the Army liable for institutional negligence. As a Army physician, McGraw's actions also fall under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. CID's investigators could lead the prosecution under Article 120, assaults of an intimate nature, or Article 134, conduct prejudicial to the good order and discipline, depending on the evidence. McGraw case exposes longstanding weaknesses in the oversight of military medicine. The suit claims Army officials gave cover to a predator in uniform by ignoring earlier warnings and maintaining policies that failed to protect patients. Victims' attorneys argue systemic neglect rather than just one individual's behavior allowed abuse to persist. The Army has said publicly that it is reviewing system clinical processes and policies, but has not clarified whether internal complaints at Fort Hood or Tripler were ever documented or investigated. From a legal and human rights perspective, the case raises questions about whether military medical systems provide the same procedural protections as civilian care. Civilian patients are entitled to professional boards, malpractice oversight, and open complaint systems. By contrast, military dependents and service members are often bound by internal command structure that can limit recourse. For service members and families who depend on military medicine, the allegations reflect a collapse of trust. A doctor-patient relationship inside a hierarchical institution like Army carries unique vulnerability, and the alleged exploitation of that trust undermines faith in the system. From an accountability standpoint, it also tests the rule of law within military structures, whether the same principles of justice that govern civilian life apply equally with the armed services. The case also exposes what some scholars call institutional self-protection, which is a tendency for large command systems to prioritize reputation over transparency. If proven, the failure to act on earlier misconduct report would not simply be administrative negligence, it would reveal a structural weakness in how the Army polices itself. As for now, McGraw has not been criminally charged. The Army CID continues to investigate while civilian litigation proceeds in Bell County. Plaintiffs' lawyers have requested a review of medical oversight policies across Army facilities. Whether this case becomes a catalyst for reform or fades into another institutional scandal depends on how transparent the Army handles the investigation and how swiftly it implements reforms. Credible response would be public accountability, mandatory oversight, protocols, and clear consequences for leadership failures. Anything less risks confirming that justice within military medicine remains conditional on command, not conscience. Here's the main concern about all this. If you're in the military, now this is for folks who aren't veterans and aren't active duty military. If you're in the military, you can't sue for malpractice. You can't sue for negligence. You can't sue for any of that if somebody screws up your medical concern. You have an operation, they screw up badly, something that you can sue for malpractice out in the civilian world. You don't have that ability in the military. They get to protect those doctors like you wouldn't believe. It's almost like they're the same as the companies that produce the vaccines out there. Seriously, it is. We've got a situation where these doctors can act in any way, shape, or form, are barely monitored. Why? Because we don't have enough of everybody to do all the monitoring and everything. So this is what the problem is. And I am sure that this dude was planning on going out in the civilian world and thinking he could do the same thing. Unfortunately, this happened in the military, but at the same time, it was fortunate for him. Not unfortunate for the military, or not fortunate for the military, but unfortunate for all of his victims. We've got to fix all of these little systems. The family members of service members should not be dealing with this, but a lot of them have to. Why? Because a lot of enlisted can't afford to have outside insurance. Military members, whatever, if they're under the rank of what this guy was, then they automatically feel like they should keep their mouth shut. It's time that we fix the system, folks. There's been multiple problems with doctors within the military. And I am not complaining about the doctors. When I was in, I saw some pretty decent doctors. but I also heard some horror stories about other doctors. We need to put in a system that across the board brings excellence. But hey, that's just my thoughts on this. This has been Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now. Bye. I hope that you liked the video. I really do. Hit like and subscribe for me, because I'm going to come out with far more videos, and you get all kinds of chance. Also, don't forget, my link tree's down below. You can get to my Patreon that way, or go to my other stuff. This has been Paul. Have a good day.